What's going on, folks? We're back with conservative commentator Dan Bongino. See, I butchered your name this time after I've said it 2 times already. I don't know why.
No, you got it right. That's good, Bongino.
Oh, Bongino. Good. Okay, all right. I thought I butchered it. Okay, let's talk about life as an NYPD officer and Secret Service agent. So, you were in NYPD back in the 90s, correct?
Yeah, from 95 to 99.
How has that dynamic changed, being an officer then as opposed to how things are now from your perspective?
Well, when I got on, there were no cell phone cameras. And I mean, if you had a cell phone camera, you were probably rich. I don't even think they existed at the time.
Yeah.
So, now, whereas even in the most dangerous areas, there are tons of good people. I mean, I grew up in, I guess, what you could call a relatively high crime area. And 99.9% of the people are great people. It's the one idiot out of 100 who ruins it. But when you were making a collar back in the day, that people would come out and they'd say, you need some help. I mean, you want me to call, if you were on a foot post. Now, sadly, not everyone, obviously, I don't want to stigmatize anyone, but a lot of folks come out with the camera.
Yeah.
And they want to make these cops, YouTube celebrities for, infamous on YouTube right away. And there's a big Ferguson effect out there. I mean, it's real. You talk to street cops, they'll tell you it's the real deal.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing about it is, like, when we do have that conversation, it never really gets fleshed out the way I think it's supposed to. And all of these conversations are always had in, like just now, you took pains to make sure you didn't generalize the people you were talking about. And
no, because they saved my butt. I mean, listen, when you're a street cop I'm white. That's not a mystery. I worked in an area that was 90 to 95% Black and Hispanic. And I'm telling you, the people in those neighborhoods that lived there were suffering. I was in the 7-5 precinct in East New York, which is a really high crime area. They would come out all the time and say to you, hey, listen, you see this guy in the corner? Don't use my name, but this guy's slinging. He's been doing it for a while. And, I'd go home every night and say, my gosh, the crime in these neighborhoods is just crushing these people. And that's kind of the irony of the Ferguson effect, is that the people you think you're helping by being an advocate against the police and stereotyping them, you're actually damaging the lives of a lot of really good people in struggling areas who don't have $1 million bank account to get out of that neighborhood. It's a real shame. When you see it up close, it really stings. It sticks with you.
Yeah, I think it bothers me a lot too, especially when we start talking about the issue of gun control in these areas too, because these are the places, and they always have the same line: oh, you just want to dump more guns into the hood and create a bigger problem. It's not about dumping guns into the hood. It's about putting people who are in these, because otherwise, what's the alternative notion? Everyone in the inner city is a gangbanger. And you've just demonstrated that's not the case. So clearly there are people who are trapped in these environments for economic reasons, more or less, and their lives are legitimately on the line. If you I've dealt with people. I even had a girlfriend one time who told me that certain nights she would hear a gunshot and have to lay in a bathtub in hopes of not getting shot. And so from that perspective, it's kind of like, well, what about those people? Like, are we just going to ignore them and let them just live in these dire environments unprotected? And then
it's insane. Yeah. And think about it, right? Like, it's not a coincidence that the most profound Supreme Court case we've seen on the Second Amendment happened in D.C. D.C. versus Heller, where Heller was like, wait, let me get this straight. I can't even defend myself in my own house. Like, this is nuts. Yeah. I mean, so few people in these high crime areas commit the crime that, when you're absolutely right, like, by you suggesting that these liberal talking points are even remotely, sane when they say things like, "Oh, you're trying to flood the hood with guns." No, the guns are already there. With 1 out of 100 people committing the crimes, do you at least want good people to give them the choice? No one's demanding you do anything, that they're actually allowed to defend themselves. I mean, it's a rational, reasonable argument. That's why it'll never make sense to liberals, because they're nuts. I mean, they're seriously cuckoo.
The most disingenuous aspect of this whole conversation that I've seen from the other side is, it all started when I started doing this whole gun rights advocacy thing. No one ever talked about the inner city. The inner city was almost maybe just like a bleep on the radar. And now after there's been this, after we've exposed the whole notion of the 33,000 people every year die from gun violence, and we expose the actual breakdown of that statistic from the standpoint of the vast majority of those, I mean, majority meaning over 60%, were suicides. And then took it even further and broke it down and say, well, no, a large concentration of these gun violence crimes are happening in very specific areas by very specific individuals in these areas. It was only then and they realized, oh shit, we really have to start talking about this now.
Yeah. I mean, you look at the DOJ's own reports on this and the Ferguson effect there with these crime rates exploding. It was funny. The DOJ put this report out there and it was largely ignored by the mainstream media. They said, well, the 56 biggest cities, we didn't see a systemic increase in crime. We only saw it in these specific 10 cities, which were all largely minority. So again, it goes back to like, who are the real people discriminating here? So let me get this straight. If it's not a largely white, affluent community, the spike in those 10 cities, you know what, folks? It's no big deal. It's just, use the air quotes, it's just those people. I mean, this is, when I had run for office and was involved in activism really heavily, this is the stuff that pissed me off so badly because it just, we're the ones who are stigmatized as the ones that don't care, when the reality is the alternate argument is true. The other side doesn't care. We're the ones fighting for your rights, not them. They don't give a damn.
They've been in control of these communities for decades now. And it's been the same thing over and over and over again. And it's in many ways done, in my mind, I can only conclude it's done purposefully, because at a certain point, benign neglect stops being benign. It's pretty blatant at that point. And so then to backtrack and then to look at someone like me and then tell me, well, you as a young black man, you shouldn't own a gun because the chances of you dying from gun violence is so much higher. And I'm like, why? Because I'm black? Because you're not giving me the same, you're not using the same rhetoric with individuals who don't look like me. So why is it now? It's like, and then on top of that, it's like, well, take me and then take somebody in these environments and then pinpoint the distinction by which why I am the way that I am and why somebody who's in this environment, who's engaging in violent criminal activity, why they might be doing that. Could it possibly have something to do with nurture or the environment in which I was inevitably able to go into and actually thrive as an individual to a certain extent? And so, go ahead.
You're right. The saddest part about this whole thing, too, is that, there's that old thing like, don't repeat the same mistakes over and over and over and over again. Like, don't be foolish. And, the fool keeps repeating the same mistakes. And what we see in a lot of these areas is we see these Democratic politicians selling the same snake oil over and over and over again, whether it's the lack of gun rights, whether it's attack the police, whether it's high taxes. And it just doesn't work. And, when I ran in Maryland, I would go in, I'd sit at Lexington Market in Baltimore City, and I would just say to people all the time, they'd say, what party are you? I said, I'm not telling you anything about my party. I'm going to ask you 3 questions. You answer the question, you tell me what I am.
Yeah.
I think you should control where your money goes. I think you should pick your health care. I think you should have self-protection rights. What am I? And they'd be like, I don't know. It kind of sounds like a Democrat to me. I'm like, no, I'm a Republican. Like, the whole point is that they're so locked into this mentality that a D in front of your name means you're some kind of an angel that everybody misses what's going on around them. And it's really a disgrace to see. There's no need for it.
Identity politics will destroy this country.
No, it's doing it right now.
Yep, absolutely. Oh, man, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. And you got to come back on. You have to come back on, man. I could do this all
NRA. Are you kidding? Listen, man, you guys fight the good fight. I'm happy to do it.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it, man. You're doing the same. You're doing the same, man. Like I said, I've watched more videos than you realize. And I have to applaud you because you do a very, very good job. I've seen you slaughter several people before.
I'm just a real pain in the ass. I'm good at that. One thing I'm good at.
Hey, I have a lot of people who know me in real life who say the same about me, too.
Good. Keep up.
Yes, sir. Well, thanks a lot, Dan, man. It was a pleasure. And you be sure to join us again.
You got it.
Absolutely, man. And when we come back, we'll be speaking with Maj. Yeah. Definitely have Maj coming up next. It should be interesting.